Alright, what's up? Long time no chat. I played 25 meetup games on Mindman Club, and this is what happened. These games were definitely something. After the SG video, which y'all seem to like, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and try my hand at this whole UHC Meetup thing, and I'm gonna really just see how unfun it is, because up till now I had never really played UHC Meetup like that. Like, I'd played it occasionally, but you know, I never really grinded it, that sort of deal. I don't really go for stats in this. You also can't even check your stats in the lobby, so that's pretty sick. I hope they change that before too long. But overall, I mean, Meetup in concept, it's a fun game. You know, you spawn with your kit, you kill people, you snowball, you get plenty of healing, upgrade your gear, that sort of thing. Or, you know, some spiteful idiot can come along and drain all of your healing, and then you end up going to final fight with 2 gaps and you die. So yeah, that's the fun of Meetup, to say the absolute least. But as y'all see in this video, I played 25 games, and this is just how they went. So with that being said, without further ado, let's go into game 1. Honestly, my first Meetup game really and truly did not go as poorly as I was expecting. Something I'm sure you'll come to see throughout this video is how spiteful some folks can be, but in this game that was fortunately not the case, which gave me a good opener to this video. You might be able to tell I was very rusty playing here. This is my first time playing MMC since SG number 15, and before that my MMC experience video, so it had definitely been some time. But either way, I start off by joining the game with 5 seconds left, so I can't change my kit to give me anything better, and I start critting out this first guy, but there's 2 other people nearby and I run away while they gang up on the first guy and kill him. I steal a bow, some XP bottles, and some arrows from his time bomb, but ultimately nothing great came from that, as I needed diamond boots to get myself full diamond. This Leo guy who had helped kill the first guy did have boots, so I fought him and he got a good few laggy hits on me before I was able to drop him and take his healing. I took his bow too, and from there I made a power 3, which can be very helpful for draining people's health and armor durability in Meetup. From there I fought 2Poppy, who put up a decent fight, but was ultimately undergeared, and our hits were about even, so he died pretty quick. What was important about this kill though was the fact that he dropped with a lot of healing. This kill set me up perfectly for the rest of the game, and all I had to do was not burn too much of it and the win would have been mine. My third kill happened to be on someone who was considerably stacked but did not have any healing, so this kill gave me the final piece of what I needed for a quick dub, Prot 4 pants. Up till now, I hadn't fought anyone with diamond pants, so I was running with the Prot 1 pair I got from my own starter kit, so this kill made me much tankier, which was very helpful in my final fight. The guy also had some extra Prot 3 pieces, which I then went to go combine into Prot 4 pieces, and I ended up with 3/4 Prot 4, which is very good for this stage of the game. By this point, there were 3 people left, including myself, and I wanted the other 2 to fight, so my healing didn't get drained. I actually hid from core memory here behind some cobblestone while he went off to fight the last guy, and this really underscores how important choosing your fights is. If I'd fought core memory, there was a chance that the fight would have burned enough of my healing to the point where I could have lost the final fight, and knowing this, I let him fight the other guy who ended up winning their exchange. Interestingly, rather than backstabbing the guy, I snuck up behind him and stole 2 sharp 1 diamond swords out of the chest, one of which was unused, by the way, so I was able to make a sharp 3 diamond, and that set me up really nicely for this fight, since this guy was stacked to the teeth. This final fight with SQ lasted about 4 minutes, par for the course when we both had this much healing, and I was winning in terms of damage, but he certainly got his licks in, I'll say that. Now, it was a good fight, and there was a point in there where his boots broke, and I initially thought it was my helmet, but I was able to pull through and win with quite a bit of healing left. Managed to snag this dub with 4 kills, which was pretty good for the first game. Game 2 went a lot more like your expected Meetup game. I got a good few kills to start off. This first guy gave me some healing, which is very important, as well as a helmet, and the second guy gave me some extra boots, and then curiously enough, I fought a third guy who was full diamond, and he definitely did not want a sword fight. I shot back and was able to get the kill pretty quick since he was low, and I figured he didn't have healing as a result of that, but wouldn't you know it, he had 7 gaps. Funny how that one works. Anyway, he dropped another power 3, which was good for me since I had one already, and the game was looking good. But then I started fighting this guy, and he was getting the most absurd hits you've ever seen. I checked his ping midway through, and it said something in the 60s, but the hits he was getting felt like he was from the Middle East. He also wasn't taking very much knockback at all, That was something else I noticed, and he seemed really dead set on a straight melee fight because of this. He was good with lava buckets, which also helped his case, but pretty early on he was saying, "No bow please," and since I'm me, you know what that meant. I bowed, and I bowed some more. As a matter of fact, I stopped fighting for a second to make my power 4. This is the only advantage I had in this fight against a guy seemingly not missing a single hit, and he was not very happy with me taking an advantageous position in our fight. Either way, I didn't want to let him drain me since I'd already gotten plenty of free healing to win this game, and I ended up with only a net loss of 1 gap and 1 head by the time I killed him, which was good. He, of course, did not take that too well, but the mileage I was about to get out of this power 4 would carry me quite far in the final fight. This guy had cleaned up 2 of the stronger players in this game, so he had plenty of resources, whereas I just had some Prot 3 pieces and no extra chest plate. My bow and my healing were the only bright spots, but what this devolved into unfortunately made that not matter. He asked to enchant, and I stopped shooting since I'd have been fine with that, but then he says, "Actually, don't worry," and starts shooting back at me. Up to this point, and for a bit after, the shots I'd gotten on him were pretty consistent, and I figured there was a good shot I could win with my power 4, but then when we got down to the 10 by 10 border, something interesting but also not wholly unexpected started happening. He started quote-unquote lagging, which I first saw when I bent him to the corner here, but from then on, he'd curiously only lag into places that helped him. This effectively put an end to the bow fight because there was no way I could shoot a guy fake lagging without him putting double the amount of shots back onto me, and from there it was down to me and my half-broken chest plate trying to charge him and kill him while he hopped around the 10 by 10 like a frog, constantly shooting me the whole time. In the end, my chest plate broke and I died with 4 kills to a cheater who was using fake lag to win this game. Was this the first of many? Let's find out together. Game 3 was also the exact kind of thing you'd expect from UHC Meetup in 2025. We'll get to the juicy part later, but for now, I spawned right in front of this guy who had the exact same stuff as me, and we looked at each other and understood we gained nothing by fighting, so we split. Someone like that gets my respect because a lot of people would just ape on me without a second thought and then die in their second fight due to a lack of healing, but not this guy. So, shout out Grief. My first actual fight had me up against Ben, and Ben is very good at rutting, right? So, my rusty ass needed a miracle to win this undergeared fight. And a miracle is what I got. Right when I thought I was dead, he messed up his bow boost, and I was able to get the kill as well as the chest plate. I made my sharp 4 iron, and went on to try and clean up these 2 guys that were fighting. The first guy dies, and their killer plays a big role in this game, so stay tuned for that, but in the end I only make off with some XP bottles and start fighting Mater. Now, they give me a run for my money, but a couple good lavas later, and I'm able to tag the kill and look through their stuff. This kill gets me the helmet I need, and the Prot 3 was very helpful. At this point, though, there are 4 people left, and one of them was the guy I tried to fight earlier, so I start fighting him. I'm putting a lot of pressure on him, but despite him being at full health, he is not too keen on fighting me, so I give chase. Pretty quickly, though, I figure out why. This other guy runs right past him and starts fighting me. Sick. Both of these guys are really laggy too, so it's impossible for me to really get the combos I need, and so my healing gets drained pretty hard in the process. At first I wasn't sure if they were teamed and the second guy just wanted to go for me, but after about 30 seconds of fighting, it's clear the second guy yelled out for his teammate and call, and oh, did he come a-running. So now, there was no way I could fight against both of them, even if I had the gear to, because winning a 2v1 in Meetup against stacked players is impossible. My only hope was for the last guy to understand the assignment, and fortunately he did. He kept the first guy busy while I fought the teammate, but eventually the first guy got away and they started 2v1ing me. I ran for a bit, but they were bow boosting and all that, and eventually we got into this 2v2 situation where me and the last guy were honestly kind of packing them. These guys were really not the best of players, and once you get used to their lag, they become much easier to fight. I almost get the first guy, but he gets a lucky water placement and I can't finish him off. Eventually, though, they both fall back on the last guy and they 2v1 him and kill him, leaving me to deal with these 2 idiots. Like I said, though, they aren't particularly smart, and I've still got some healing to help me out. What's really funny, though, is the fact that the teammate didn't actually heal at all after the last guy died, so I had a couple quick shots on him and he ended up dying, which is pretty funny. I managed to grab his healing and kept running, but when a team of 2 gets this stacked off of a 12-player game, there's still not very much hope. I had the healing to win it, but not the armor, and what eventually happened was, after tossing the first guy around for a while, he ran down into this cave and started anviling stuff. When I went to chase, he started low-grounding me and drained a bit of my healing, and the border shrank right then, so I thought maybe I could finish him off there, but had to heal. Pretty quick after I started shooting him, he dug down to anvil more stuff, so I started to dig after him, not intending to fully commit, but he only replaced like 3 blocks and I missed the MLG and ended up dying down there. Not that I'd have had much of a chance had I not chased. He'd have made full Prot 4 with all the loot he had, and my armor wasn't nearly as good. Plus, my helmet was half broken even after I repaired it on the anvil, so it just wasn't sustainable. More or less, I was fried no matter what, so I ended up dying with 3 kills to a team of 2 in Game 3. I should take some time to remind y'all that teaming is expressly banned in Meetup, unlike SG, so I guess we're going into Game 4 without me having died legitimately even once. Sick. Well, that certainly continues into Game 5, let's just say. Game 4 started off kind of sudden. I barely had time to organize my inventory again, but by the looks of things, the guy next to me had the exact same problem. His armor completed mine perfectly, so I was able to get a good lava on him and killed him without taking any damage, which is always nice. Got a bit of healing off of that and started the game with full diamond. Then I got into this 3-way exchange, which I should mention is never a good idea because I left the interaction down some health and healing. So, of course, I immediately went after this Yair dude who was in the middle of fighting somebody else. After a brief struggle, I was able to kill Yair, but not without taking my share of bow shots from this Nuska guy who will come back in later. I make my Char 4, and I start fighting this Physic dude who I'd actually fought a moment earlier in an SG lobby, and he was pretty good at rotting, so I was on my guard a bit. He was pretty undergeared though, so he mostly just ran for a bit, and then the border shrank and poof, he was just gone. The border shrink did immediately spawn me next to one of the guys from the first 3-way fight though. And he said no heal, which is usually not a sign to fight, but I went for it anyway, and it honestly paid off because he didn't hit me once. From that kill, I got a second power 3, and you know what that means. After I made my power 4, I saw Physic fighting Nuska and went to go meddle in that, but Nuska had a bone to pick after earlier and said, nah, I'm going straight for you. And so we had a longbow fight. He was honestly pretty good at bow, but I've had so many years of practice under my belt, as well as what was probably a significant weapon advantage, so the fight was barely contestable from his end. Physic let us fight, probably happy to not be fighting for a moment, and I shot Nuska so many times. It was pretty ridiculous. I wasn't sure if I was still too rusty to aim a bow like that, but this game erased any of that doubt in my mind. I eventually cornered him and got his stuff right as the border shrank and immediately started fighting Physic. I wasn't sure if he had the healing to compete, especially given his gear situation, but pretty quickly I figured out he did not have the resources to win a fight with me. Our fight was short. Turned out he did have some healing, but certainly not enough if he went the distance. Game 4 ended with a 5-kill dub. Yet again, Game 5 started right as I joined the lobby, so I had to organize my inventory super quick. I went after this extremely laggy guy who got me very low a few times, but I was able to kill him in the end. I got a decent amount of healing out of it, fortunately, but then I ended up in this absolutely nightmarish situation where I was in a 3-way fight at the border with this awful water pool screwing up the whole fight. Now, I wanted this guy Jair's boots since that would complete my set, but Modder was there and it was just such a mess. I was really going hard for these boots, but I mean, I did eventually get both pairs that were in his inventory, but got my kill stolen. At 3 players left with a third on 13 HP and not healing, I figured the game could still be won despite my loss of healing, but then Modder kills the last guy completely under my radar and gets really stacked from it. Since the guy wasn't healing, I can't imagine he had any left, but the fight that ensued afterward told me Modder did not need any more healing than they had. Most of it was bowing. I was performing significantly better, but it was a gear diff at that point, and although I shot Modder for probably 20 gaps worth when I only had 8, the amount of healing was just too much for me to overcome. We got down to 10 by 10, and interestingly enough, I broke Modder's helmet and boots right at the end, so there was technically a chance I could have won if I'd gotten even one more peek shot in there somewhere, but one bow boost later, and it was over. Honestly, that was how they got most of their damage. They got some shots in, sure, but a lot of it came from when they'd aggressively bow boost at me and put me on defense. All in all, massive overperformance from me in Game 5, but it just barely wasn't enough to steal the win, and I died with 1 kill. This game was completely mental. In Game 6, I started off by getting into this huge group fight with like 5 people, hoping to get some better armor since all I had to my name were some diamond boots. I stole this kill in the middle of it, took some healing as well, and booked it out of there. I followed this Coronado guy who was chasing Daddy Knife since both of them had the armor pieces I needed, and eventually through the massive amounts of encoding lag, very sorry about that, Knife killed Coronado and I swiped all the armor I needed. When I went to go fight Knife though, I quickly learned that this guy was unbearably laggy. Like, Australians pull better ping than this guy. Those hits are clinically insane, and once I saw he was pulling 326 MS, I understood what was going on. The only way I was going to kill him was if I got him in some sort of gank, which I tried to do with this pool, but it was still just an absolutely terrible experience fighting him, so I backed out. The guy was absolutely pressing me. Fighting him was so hard, and I knew I had to kill him sooner than later, because if we just drained each other's healing, there was no way for either of us to win at that point. Finally, I got him in a situation where he couldn't escape, and I was able to kill him with 1 heart left. From there, I had 14 gaps left, which was enough to win enough to win the game if my next fight was the final fight. So I let the last 2 guys fight it out, and this guy without a chestplate honestly put in a ton of work, and it was him that really handed me this win here. Gavin was very low on healing by the end of that fight, and after I got all my armor up to par, I went for the fight and came out victorious. Game 6 ended as a 3-kill win. Game 7 was a smaller lobby, but it still ended up being an alright game. I spawned with 3/4 diamond, missing chestplate, so I wanted to find someone who had that missing piece, but in such a small lobby, I only found this half diamond guy, who I proceeded to jump and then awkwardly kill after missing a good few shots. I got his healing and turned around to fight the guy that he'd seen and he was shooting at, who was absurdly laggy, close to the degree of the knife guy from the last game, and after a brief fight, I killed him too. From about the 2-minute mark in this game all the way up until its end, it was down to me and the last guy. As you can no doubt tell, we had a very long and drawn out fight. He was pretty decent, a bit on the laggy side, but let's be real, who isn't at 2 AM when I decided to play this game, and we were going toe to toe with me holding the upper hand with my power 3 bow shots. Those shots were the only thing keeping me in, as I found out at the end, because at the beginning of the fight the guy had been anviling stuff and my 3/4 prod 3 did not stand a chance if the fight lasted too long. I wasn't sure if he had more healing than me to start, but he certainly had slightly more at the end, and when I finally killed him after his boots popped, I saw 2 pieces of shredded prot 4 armor and a prot 1 helmet. I'd actually broken his helmet earlier in the fight as well, and there's no doubt in my mind that his boots that just broke were prot 4's too, so it was very likely that I'd just beaten a guy with full prot 4 and sharp 4 iron with similar healing to mine when I had a sharp 3 diamond, a prot 2 helmet, and prot 3 for the rest. Pretty good showing. I'm 100% convinced that if the fight had gone the distance, I'd have lost, since he had 1 more gap than me as well as extra armor, so it was very fortunate that he did not know about his boots breaking until it was too late. After that intense fight, I won Game 7 with 3 kills. Well, I could say that Game 8 was not the first of its kind. I got a pretty quick first kill, which was nice. He sure ran for as long as he could, but that thankfully wasn't too long. I then backstabbed these other 2 guys that were fighting, and one of them burned to death, so I swapped all the loot from his chest, which included a sharp 2 diamond sword and a good bit of healing. The other guy in that fight, though, definitely caused my downfall of this game. He was in that sweet spot in terms of ping, just over 100, so he got the usual hits those types get, could still rod normally, and his knockback was just delayed enough to be a problem. I was able to kill him after a couple of minutes and without losing too much healing at that, but I was really hoping he'd have a better sword on hand so I could stand a chance in the final fight, whether that was a sharp 3 iron or at least 2 sharp 1 diamonds, but no dice. So that meant I was going into the final fight against someone I've known since 2018, and this person takes Minecraft extremely seriously, and I only had a sharp 2 diamond when he had what was most likely full prot 4 and a sharp 4 iron. Not to mention, my first kill was the only person I'd gotten a chestplate from, and it was prot 2 at that, so even though I made prot 4 pants and a prot 4 helmet, I was still stuck with that same half-broken prot 2 chestplate and prot 3 boots. So there I was, going into the final fight against a guy with an ego the size of Alaska, and I was undergeared. To be honest with you, I wouldn't be saying those things about him if he'd been more respectful. I mean, the guy's older than me, and I turn 23 next month, so it's like, what are we doing? But despite his past, I was willing to give him a respectful fight, and he just was not ready to do the same, which sucks. I mean, you'd think being a notorious underperformer and every Bridges scrim he'd play in would give him some humility, but you just can't get some people to grow up, I guess. The fight went about as you'd expect. I lasted honestly pretty long and completely shredded him in bow, but when it came down to it, he had more healing than me, better armor than me, more armor than me, and a better sword than me, and since we're about equal in terms of melee skill, gear became the deciding factor here, and I knew that throughout the fight, so I wasn't really giving it my best. At the end here, though, he was really excited to have beaten someone with a fraction of his gear on terrain this atrocious, but putting what I've known about him for, 7 years into perspective, it's not that surprising he'd do this at the end of what I thought was an honorable fight. Game 8 ended in my death after getting 2 kills. Game 9 was a rough one. Not for the reason you'd think, but the fights in it were just really frustrating. I'm able to catch this first guy with his pants down, but let me tell you, the guy immediately pulled them right back up, pulled up his zipper, and fastened his button in a matter of probably 2 seconds. I should mention, I spawned into this game with really solid weapons, being a sharp 3 iron sword and a power 3 bow, but the cost of that was getting very little armor and like no healing pretty much, so dropping this guy fast was imperative if I wanted to win the game. After he runs and bows for long enough, I finally get him, and he hasn't even chugged all his healing. That's honestly really helpful for the rest of the game, because I go in and try to steal this guy's kill and don't, but I do snag some of the good items in the chest like the sword and the bow. The next fight that happened was a pretty sloppy performance on my end. I was really surprised I didn't just die like twice in there, because I was missing rods. Half the rods that did look like I hit didn't actually register. I was smacking him with my bucket for a good enough portion of the fight, and I finally was able to win a trade from lower health to cinch this fight, and I got his 11 gaps, which were a lifesaver. After looting his chest, I saw that he had a lot of good items, and that combined with the extra sharp 3 iron and power 3 bow that I'd already gotten meant that I had a pretty easy path to victory between my healing and the gear I could make. Before I could even place down an anvil, though, this half-diamond guy rushes me, and believe me when I say this dude is a frequent user of stimulatory substances. This guy was using so many lava buckets, rotted so many times, got me into the worst positions, and barely let me play the game at all. I also didn't perform too great in this fight, but let's be real, when the guy you're fighting is tweaking the hell out to this degree, no amount of counterplay is going to save you. He drained more of my healing, I think, than the second guy I fought. What that left me with was fortunately enough gear to win the final fight, but healing was going to be the deciding factor at that point. So I did what I do and abused power 4 on him for a few minutes. That ended up mattering because after an extremely long and drawn out fight, I managed to drain his healing and get the kill to win game 9 with 4 kills. Definitely not the greatest showing, the stats were decent, but I performed so sloppily in these fights that it was just a nightmare. Game 10 was the roughest thus far. For the life of me, I could not get a fight to end because the only people that I fought came after me with like full diamond and were pretty much impossible for my half diamond kit to stand against. When I'd start winning these fights, there'd be a swarm of people there and fighting became just unwise. Eventually, this Medina guy wouldn't leave me alone, so I started fighting him, but you guessed it, one of the guys from earlier on in the game was nearby, and rather than do the smart thing and force him to back off, he kept coming after me, which resulted in a fight that I was on track to win, but we got cleaned up by the other guy, which I had fully expected would happen, but could do nothing about with this spiteful idiot throwing both our games. If I'd managed to actually get the kill, I could have used the no-clean timer to sort through the stuff and get away, but the other guy stole it at the worst possible time, and I died in game 10 with no kills. Game 11 was a masterclass in playing your cards right. This one started off with a rematch against the guy from Game 9, and he was just as defensive here as he was there. But I needed him dead, since his chest play was the only one in the entire game, as I later found out. I knocked him into this cave where I was sure I had him until, surprise surprise, the same guy that cleaned in Game 10 came back for more. Anyway, Game 9 guy gets away, and Game 10 guy comes to fight me. At this point, I was low on healing, I had the least gear of anybody, and if it came down to me in Game 10 guy, there was a very low chance I was winning that. Fortunately, I found the last guy running around near the border and quick dropped him, and he actually had some sugar and vapor on him, which I thought was interesting, but more important than the sugar was the healing he had, as well as the sword, and that allowed me to make myself a sharp 4 iron and a power 2 bow, and taking his boots helped my case as well. By now, it was down to me, Game 9 guy, and Game 10 guy, and those two were in the middle of a fight, just like I'd hoped they would be, since Game 10 guy definitely still had a lot of healing, but Game 9 guy was the more stacked of the two, so them evening each other out was how I planned to win this game. But I still had to strike when the time was right, and I did so at about the best possible time because Game 9 guy was fresh out of healing by the time I got there, and we both started fighting Game 10 guy. Not quite 2v1ing per se, but I understood he was the biggest threat, and as long as I positioned myself right, 9 would use the remainder of his firepower on 10. I understood that since 9 was on 4 hearts and not healing, he wasn't a threat, so I kept 10 busy while 9 got the occasional bow shot in, and that was what made the difference in terms of healing. Eventually, 10 gets away from me and starts to go for 9, but 9's already burning his stuff, which I found funny, but ultimately helped me in the end, because if 10 had gotten 9's chest plate, we were about even on healing at that point, and that could have been the difference between winning and losing this game. After a brief fight against 10, I come out on top in game 11 with 2 kills. This was about as good as a game can go. Game 12 started with me next to 2 people, one of which had the 2 armor pieces I needed to get full diamonds, so even though it was a bit dangerous, I went for him. All of a sudden, the entire game was there chasing him down, and I was in front, so I got the kill, all the armor, the healing, everything I needed. This other guy who was chasing ended up getting killed too, and I fought the guy that killed him, and although it took a second, it paid off in a huge way when I killed him with like 5 seconds until border shrink. At that point, I had so much healing, more than I've ever had in this video so far, and moved on to my next fight against Behalf. At this point, Behalf had been caught up in so many clusterfucks that they barely had healing left, but I did still get 2 gaps in ahead from them, so it was worth. Afterward, I made full prot 4 and went in for the fight against this last guy who was completely covered in lunar cosmetics. I definitely noticed my hits were a little slow in this fight, but that hardly mattered since I had the upper hand for the full duration of the fight. In the end, I ended up winning at game 12 with 4 kills and damn near half a stack of gaps. Very good showing and the best one of the video so far, without a doubt. Well, this one was certainly interesting. To start game 13, I spawned right next to this guy and started fighting him, but he definitely was not the type to drop very fast. And as we were fighting, this other guy comes in and starts hitting me. So I'm like, alright, sick, we're getting cleaned. But the janitor here did not get away quite as easily. I was able to kill him and take all his healing before the first guy caught up, and then resumed my fight with that guy. As I said, he was not one to drop, and he ate every last bit of his healing before dying. So it definitely wasn't the greatest fight to take, but I still had plenty of healing. After these 2 kills, I was full diamond and wanted to not fight anyone until final fight if I could help it, but the fact of the matter was I did not have any spare armor outside of a couple chest plates, and it wasn't like my existing armor could get me through a final fight. So, I had to go fight someone and take their armor if I wanted to stand a chance in the final fight. I ran into this bedwater guy who was putting up a better fight than I would have liked, but regardless, I needed his armor if I wanted to win. We fought for a bit, but just like earlier this game, another guy, the last guy in this instance, comes in and starts hitting me in the back. After I get away, he starts fighting bedwater, and I'm shooting at him trying to put a dent in his armor or his healing or whatever he's got, because I know if I survive to fight him in the end, I'm going to be at a severe disadvantage. I'm putting in work on that front, but bedwater is constantly on the defensive, falling into random time bomb craters the whole 9 yards. He got low on HP and could never get back up to full, but that played to my favor because my only shot at winning from there was if I managed to kill him, get his armor and healing, and not leave anything to the last guy. Now, miraculously, that is exactly what happened. The border shrank, and bedwater and I sandwiched the guy, but he was definitely too low to keep that up for long, and eventually got knocked off to the side where I swiped the kill and all the diamond armor. Even still, I wasn't sure if I'd win because this guy had been cleaning people all game, and as such had a ton of healing. After a lot of bowing ensued, the border shrank in the absolute worst possible way, putting me right next to the guy and getting stuck in the wall. I played a bit more defense, chipping at him with my bow, and eventually he has the audacity to put 2 question marks in chat like he didn't just clean up a perfectly honorable fight. I asked him how much healing he had, and it wasn't too much more than what I had, but it was still a sizable lead, and it told me I needed to really be on my game if I wanted to win. The fight continued, the border shrank to 10 by 10, and we ended up in this awful crater with water flowing all throughout. I actually dropped my rod for a second, but thankfully I'm able to pick it up, and then I get this bow shot here that breaks his helmet, and I know there's a chance. I go in for melee as he puts on an iron helmet, and while he scrambles, his boots break as well, allowing me to get the kill, and he certainly did have plenty of healing to spare. Ironically, this guy's problem was not having enough armor, the exact same problem I would have faced had I not gone to fight bedwater, so that really shows you just how different each game can really be. I ended game 13 with a 4-kill dub, which you just love to see. Game 14 was the most MMC thing you could imagine. I spawned in with 4 gaps and 2 heads, which if I'm not wrong is the absolute least amount of healing you could spawn with. Maybe it's 5 gaps and 1 head, but anyway. Regardless, I went for a fight against this guy who had a chest plate I needed, and although the entire game was fighting all around us, I managed to get the kill and the loot, which was good for me. Immediately, this other guy comes up, and of course I'm still low on healing, so I want to see if I can't get any more of that, but he's getting the most insane hits you've ever seen, so I've got to be on my guard a bit. Eventually, though, he starts doing what MMC players do and bow boosts toward me, which, if you'll recall from the SG video, has 0 counterplay whatsoever. And although this guy was just as low as I was, he still bow boosted to me and used the iframes to get a very long double hit onto me for the kill at half a heart. Pretty unfortunate, ending game 14 with 1 kill and dying to a guy abusing a broken mechanic with no counterplay that never should have been on the server in the first place. Very fun. Game 15 thankfully went way better. It wasn't a big fill, there were only 8 players here, and half of us ended up in this train of people all chasing down this one half diamond guy. My kit was an absolute banger. I spawned with a sharp 2 diamond and a power 3 bow, as well as 2 prop 3 diamond pieces, which is about the best you could possibly get, but that does definitely come at the cost of some healing, so being the last man standing out of the 4 players that were over here meant I most likely won. The first guy died eventually, I stole some stuff, and then the second guy from behind me died as well, which left me with Sergio, whose chestplate I really needed. I had the weaponry and healing to win this fight and definitely used it because it took this lucky lava to secure the kill. After I got the chestplate, I was pretty much set up for the rest of the game. I was 14-4 on healing, and the other two guys were fighting, which I was happy to let happen since they just train each other. For a funny amount of time this game, I was just mowing the lawn and cutting down all the grass, because the grass on this server really and truly tilts me sometimes when I'm trying to rod people and there's tall grass in the way. So after mowing the lawn for a while, the other two guys' fight finally ends, and by then I'm ready to go for the fight. I don't jump the guy as he comes out of the cave, that's just not what I do. Mostly because it's risky. And pretty quick afterward we start fighting on the map's newly mowed lawn. And let me tell you, this fight felt so much cleaner than any of the others thus far because it was on flat ground, no time bomb craters, no annoying ass pools of water, no grass to screw up my bucket placements, and there were plenty of those. That last guy saw why I mowed the lawn when I lavaed him probably 10 to 15 times because my bucket placed perfectly every single time and I was able to make quick work of the guy as he ran out of healing. Since I didn't get 2 of the kills in the beginning of the game, I ended game 15 with a 2-kill win. Now this one was a case study in how spiteful little idiots can cost you games if they want to. Game 16 started with this absolute clusterfuck. So many people were fighting, and of course I had to deal with this absolute demon taking no knockback and bow boosting themselves toward everybody and draining my healing. I managed to get away and eventually snagged these 2 kills, getting myself plenty of gear and healing with a crisp combo on the second guy here, but then this guy comes after me before I can get a chance to make my Sharp 4 Iron and combine some other gear. I know this guy from SG, and as you see, he sure likes to rot a lot. Now, I didn't have very much healing at this point in the game, and dropping this guy quick was going to be how I got some more, and I also knew I could easily take him. It was just a matter of him dropping, which he definitely did not want to do. I'm pretty confident he had more healing than I did, which is why I stayed in the fight, because if I did drop him, there'd be a massive payoff. But as time went on, I became less interested in fighting him and wanted him to fight the other guy, but there was no chance of that happening. I'm sure he realized well into that fight, just as I did, that no matter who won this, and with how many more hits I'd gotten on him, the answer to who win this fight becomes more and more apparent, but no matter who won this fight, they were going to lose straight away to the last guy who'd already gotten 5 kills and probably infinite amounts of stuff. Now, mind you, this guy came after me first. I tried disengaging and getting my stuff together, but he was out for blood. I did finally kill him, as expected, but by that point I had very little healing, and the last dude was some Australian bow-boosting menace with probably half a stack of gaps and full prot 4, so it was pretty much boned by that point. My last kill just was so dead set on throwing both our games, and that just shows that whenever that happens, you are pretty much fried no matter what you do. If you can't shake the guy, you're losing that game no matter what, and these types always know that, and always know what they're doing. In the end, I tried to force a hit trade in this cave with a pre-head, but it did not end up working, and even if it did, I'd probably have needed multiple extra hits to win that, so it was a far-fetched plan from jump. Game 16 ended with me dying with 3 kills. This was a frustrating one for sure. In game 17, I spawned at the border with nobody around for miles until eventually I come across half the lobby at the other end of the map. I get my kill stolen on this first guy who took off his helmet, and just when I think I have all the healing, it just poofs out of my inventory and right into this other guy's. So I need to kill him, and fast. We start fighting, but then I get backstabbed by this guy who will be very important later. I eventually get really low on healing and clean up the guy who started fighting this other dude, and I get all the healing from that initial clusterfuck and then some. The guy he was fighting was super low as well, and I quickly chase him down and kill him for 8 more gaps. At this point, I'm riding high, I have over a stack of gaps and 11 golden heads, I can make a Sharp 4 Iron, life is good. No sooner does the second guy's time bomb go off than the guy from before starts coming after me. He backs off for a second, presumably to watch the other fight, which was curious to me because if the other two were fighting, he could clean it up and get a ton of stuff from it, but no, he came back toward me. Now, this guy was laggy, barely even fightable. I get some good hits in here and there, but this guy is teleporting, and there's just nothing I can do about it. The other fight ends on the other side of the map during this, and so I can only imagine what the last dude has, but something we'll see they both have in common is they love bow boosting. When someone with low ping bow boosts, you might be able to rod them back from time to time, but when someone with like southern Argentinian ping bow boosts, they are hitting you multiple times. I run back over to where the last guy is, hoping he'll intervene, but he just sits there all the while the other dude is getting nutty hits with his lag. Eventually, I get him super low a couple times, but he survives, probably due to having full prot 4, but then he feeds to what I assume was his teammate all along. The guy who didn't intervene before when I was at a disadvantage now suddenly does to steal all his friend's stuff, including all the diamond helmets, which by now I'd noticed I did not have an extra of. The one I had was the one for my spawn kit, which is Prot 1 and ultimately pretty useless, but it was better than nothing, and I certainly needed a backup helmet if I wanted to win this thing. I certainly had the healing to beat the teammate, no doubt about it, but I did not have the armor, and if my helmet broke, I was as good as dead, especially with border shrinking. The teammate was only marginally less laggy, and now he had what was most likely full Prot 4 and a good enough sword. My only hope at that point was for his armor to break with how much he was bow boosting himself, and I tried to pad that along by shooting him a number of times, but this was a guy who just got fed probably 2 sets of armor on top of whatever else he already had. He was not running out of stuff. Eventually, to no one's surprise, my helmet breaks and I drop with 21 gaps. Not the type of thing that would happen if I'd had actual gear, but a coordinated effort to ensure I lost the game will do that to you. Game 17 ended with me dying with 2 kills. Game 18 had the potential to take a turn for the worse, but fortunately it did not. I spawned in the corner of the map and couldn't find anyone for a bit, but the first person I found was Cosmetics Guy from Game 12's final fight. That fight went similarly to how it went back in that game, which was fortunate for me since I needed his armor. After running around a bit, I came up on Modder fighting this other guy, and the other guy managed to win and get away with some healing, which I wanted. That fight, unfortunately, lasted much longer than I wanted it to. There was also this other guy coming in and getting hits every now and then, which made it more frustrating to fight, and ultimately the difference between me winning or losing was going to be if this guy quick dropped or not. There was actually a good chance of that happening because he wasn't full diamond, and eventually we get over to where this giant ravine was and continued fighting. The last 2 guys were fighting in the ravine, so I really tried to not knock my guy down there with them, and fortunately I was successful in doing so, because when that fight ended, both of us were probably boned if we kept fighting with that third guy down there in the ravine with us. Eventually, though, I kill my guy after his iron helmet breaks and get a ton of healing from it, as well as some better armor since the armor I had was not fit for a final fight. Going into the last fight against Dimitar, I had 3/4 Prot 3 and 1/4 Prot 4 with a sharp 4 iron, so a very good showing overall there. With plenty of healing after my last kill, I was able to close out this game quicker than how most of these final fights go, and after a good and honorable fight, Game 18 ended as a 3-kill dub. His stuff was similar to mine, but I definitely had the healing advantage, so if I didn't drop him with 3 gaps left, he wouldn't have lasted much longer anyway. Well, this one went pretty well. Game 19 started with me taking a fight against this guy for some healing. He put up a fight for a little bit, but ultimately I was fortunate enough to end up dropping him and getting a good bit out of it. Immediately afterward, this guy came in and we started fighting. He put up a good fight for a bit for sure, and I definitely should not have taken a risk like this at the end of that fight, but we got to about equal health and I went for a couple hits and won the fight on very low HP. The healing and gear I got from that was very helpful as it set me up nicely and got me to full diamond. I noticed I had 2 power 2 bows and a power 3 bow in my inventory, so, of course, in my typical fashion, I made a power 4 right there. I did notice my helmet and boots were lacking in protection a bit, but as long as my next fight got me some better pieces, I was fine. That fight happened when Zeskir came up behind me in the desert, and it was a pretty good fight. We were honestly going hit for hit, but I quickly realized he was much more stacked than I thought. His sword was doing more damage, and it felt like I wasn't doing nearly as much to him. I used my newly made power 4 to my advantage, and the damage I got there made the difference in the final exchange. I won that fight on 2 hearts and took all the stuff I needed for the rest of the game from his time bomb chest. For most of the rest of this game, the guy who helped me fight the teamers all the way back in Game 3 was locked in a 5-minute duel with this Omar dude, which I was happy to sit back and watch unfold. They both had resources to spare from the looks of things, and knowing this, I let them fight it out with the intention of out-healing the winner of that fight at the end. Which, of course, was exactly what happened. Omar eventually ran out of healing right as the border shrank to 25 by 25, and after I let the other guy enchant and repair his armor, because, let's be real, I knew for a fact the guy was going to be drained of all of his healing after a fight that long, we engaged in a short battle with me coming out on top without having to eat much healing at all. He was hitting some good bow shots, but I had power 4, and it's kind of hard to beat that in a bow fight in this game. He definitely had the gear to win, but as I calculated, certainly not the healing, and that was the deciding factor for my 4-kill win in Game 19. This is the ideal meetup game. Game 20 started with me getting 3/4 Prot 3 diamond with a sharp 3 iron sword and a power 3 bow, so really just about the best possible start. I couldn't find anyone for a bit, but then I stumble across a pole at the other corner of the map, and he hits me a grand total of once in this short little fight here, and everything in this guy's chest was just perfect. Another sharp 3 iron, another power 3 bow, a diamond chest plate, another 6 gaps, and 6 heads. the absolute perfect kill, and it really set me up perfectly for the rest of the game. One kill in, and I had a sharp 4 iron and a power 4 bow. A bit later, I see this full diamond guy beelining toward where Zesk was fighting some other guy, and he intervenes with Zesk dying in the cluster. I'm able to snatch another 3 gaps out of the chest, and I leave the Septar guy at the full diamond dude's mercy, hoping he could put in some work. In the meantime, I fight Ecstasiator over in another corner of the map and quickly kill him too, and get all the healing from his chest a second before the other guy gets there. By now, I have 25 gaps and 17 heads, and I know that this game is mine as long as I don't drop. So I start fighting the other guy, and I quickly find out he is the worst type of laggy, getting random extra hits and bow boosting directly over your head, that kind of thing. I'm definitely getting the hits to win it. The guy from before comes back and intervenes in his usual fashion, but eventually the first guy I was fighting runs off to anvil stuff and I'm left to deal with Friffa. I know from experience he's not the hardest fight ever, so I go for a quick drop after we fight for a bit. It got a little dicey since the last guy was coming back toward us and I got caught in this water, but he goes for a second and I'm able to finish him off. Before I can anvil any of the gear I just got, the last guy comes back and resumes the fight, but he quickly feels the might of the power 4 and backs up for long enough to let me survey what was in my inventory. I keep him back for a bit longer and make prop 4 pants, and we continue fighting. He's definitely getting his share of laggy hits, but after a bit more power 4 action, he runs off and climbs up on top of this tree, which I thought was a little odd, but then I saw he wasn't healing and understood what was going on. I had what was probably more than half of all of the healing ever in the game still in my inventory, so it was a pretty easy win from jump because of that. I eventually got one little limp shot on him after he takes off most of his armor, and then I'm guessing he fell off the tree after that and died to fall, thus ending game 20 as a 4-kill win. On a pretty good streak here. Let's hope that keeps up. Of course, game 21 immediately broke that streak with the exact same plot as some of these other games you've seen thus far. I really was not looking for yet another rematch with game 9 guy, but he certainly was looking for a rematch with me, and that sucked because all I wanted to do was kill Friffa for his armor since it didn't complete my set. Eventually, I'm able to shake game 9 guy for long enough to kill Friffa and get his armor, but with nobody else around, I'm forced to fight this guy yet again. It wasn't a fight I wanted to take since I knew he'd be low on healing, but the guy is like a leech you can't get rid of. He had to die if I wanted to fight anyone else or really do much of anything. So I killed him as quick as I could, and the border shrinking helped with that quite a bit, but of course, as fate would have it, he was down to 1 gap by the time I dropped him, and there were very few people left, so I needed to drop someone with a good bit of healing if I wanted to win here. The problem was, this Roy guy had already gotten a bunch of kills and was looking unstoppable, so I really needed to get some healing or I was just fried. Both of the remaining players outside of Roy did not have much gear and had apparently been fighting for a while, so Roy just kind of had a monopoly on the healing within the game at that point. I go and kill Takuatoda after a brief fight, and he does drop with 3 gaps and a prop 4 chestplate, which is nice, but ultimately I had no shot because Roy was right there backstabbing me in the chest. Now, I will say, despite my total lack of endgame gear, I was tossing this guy around like a ragdoll. I outhit him probably close to a 2-to-1 margin, constantly hitting my rod tricks and outshooting him by a good bit too, but ultimately nothing was going to get me close enough to a win here. We got into this cave where I was still getting way more hits, but when my helmet broke, it was over. Not that I'd have had the time to put on another, nor would it have helped me much in the grand scheme of things. Despite my overperformance, he ended this game with 12 gaps left to my 3 gaps and 1 head, so I'd need to keep up that 2-to-1 hit ratio and then some if I wanted to win this one. All good though, just another game where I got out-healed. Game 21 ended as a 3-kill death. Game 22 was just completely tragic in every sense of the word. My first fight was against Friffa yet again, and you can tell in this fight I'm not warmed up and I haven't played for a couple days. His armor completes my set perfectly, which was what I was looking for, and I'm able to drop him pretty quick, which is nice. This other guy immediately comes in looking for a clean, so I fight him, but he does not have the gear to stay in the fight for very long, and I drop him and get a good bit of healing out of that. And then, surprise surprise, a third guy comes in looking for a clean, and meets the exact same fate after I get this somewhat awkward lava bucket placement that ends up working in the end somehow. At this point, I have full prot 3, I can make a power 3 bow, a sharp 4 iron, and I have a ton of healing. Everything is looking up, and then this Hector guy comes along. He's exceedingly sweaty, but I know I can take him, and his gear doesn't look to be all that good. So this fight goes on for a bit. I'm definitely putting in the work, even though half my rods are going through him, and then we get to this exchange where I have a slight health advantage on him, and I know I can end the fight here and secure my dub if I kill him. His back is to the lava he placed, and hills on either side of him, so if I just land the right rods, I've got him. It takes a second, but I do in fact hit the rod that I need to hit, so he's all teed up for me, and then I accidentally scroll over to my water bucket in my last slot, and he doesn't die. Don't get me wrong, I love my glorious Model I, but this happens so many goddamn times, and it's really frustrating when it does. If any of you know how to reduce the scroll wheel sensitivity, because what happens is my finger barely even touches it and it activates, please, 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 please let me know down in the comments, because this is not the first time it's gotten me killed, and it ruined what was otherwise a very easy win in this game here. Game 22 ended with a 3-kill death. I gotta say, Game 23 might be the singular worst of the bunch, and I'm saying that as the guy who won the whole thing. You'll see why in a bit. I started off this game with 3/4 diamond, which was pretty good, but I was missing pants, and the first guy I saw didn't have diamond pants either, so I decided not to fight him. The second guy I saw also didn't have diamond pants, so I decided not to fight him either, but he tailed me while I chased down this third guy who did have diamond pants. I start fighting him, he doesn't really swing back a whole bunch, and he takes a moment to kill, but I do secure it before the second guy catches up to me. Afterward, I fight the second guy, and he's pretty good to be honest, but he does not have the gear to contend, and I am able to pick up that kill pretty fast as well. At this point, I have a lot of healing and a pretty good sword and bow, but I've only got strong helmets and boots in my inventory, as neither of the people I fought had an extra chestplate or pants, and mine were Prot 1 and 2 respectively. With 4 players left, my next kill needed to set me up well for the final fight, and I started to fight, and as I started to fight this inexhaustible guy, I looked around the map and I thought to myself, wow, this is quite possibly the worst meetup map I have ever seen in my entire life. There is so much water. Most of the inner part of the map is this shallow lake here, and I know that no matter what, every fight from here onwards is going to be the most AIDS thing ever, so I'm fighting inexhaustible. I notice his armor is pretty nuts compared to mine, but I could still get the upper hand on him despite his hits and gear being far superior. Anyway, we keep fighting for a while. This was honestly the longest real fight of the game, and he was not giving up despite the fact that we could only fight in or around water. Eventually, though, he presumably runs out of healing and decides to be toxic and burns all his stuff, which is just really so swell, and I'm unable to get his chestplate or pants, which I desperately need for this final fight. Aaron Baru comes up to me before I have a chance to anvil anything, so we start fighting, but it's just as painful as the last fight, and we both know it. The one saving grace here is that I started this fight with 4 stacks of arrows, and he did not exactly make himself very hard to shoot. After burning enough of my healing on a guy who lavaed his stuff, I knew my win condition was going to be abusing the hell out of my power 3 and 4 stacks of arrows, so that's mostly what I played for. There was still some semblance of a fight going on before the border shrank down to 10 by 10, but I knew in my heart of hearts that this was going to be a bow spammy snooze fest in the lake with very little land involved. One thing you may have noticed if you play Meetup on the server, or if you've watched close throughout this video, is that in certain places in the 10 by 10 border, you cannot actually place any blocks as the server recognizes those spots as part of the border. I knew this well by this point, and given the terrain we were fighting on, I was well aware of what my next move needed to be. That, of course, was bow spam the ever-living hell out of him while he couldn't place blocks. I did that a couple times actually, and it worked like a charm. The rest of this fight went about as you'd expect, even though I'm pretty sure I had less armor and healing to start. The fact that we were fighting in this awful lake automatically gave me a huge advantage with my power 3 bow and 4 stacks of arrows. I shot this poor fella probably over 100 times in this tiny enclosure, and eventually it got to a point where he just gave up and took off his armor despite having some healing left, which I really can't blame him for. Game 23 thankfully ended with me getting a 4-kill dub. 24 was annoying, and was a case for why you should never take cave fights in this game. I didn't want to fight this guy at first since he looked like the type to run and bow a lot, but since I'd spawned with full diamond, I could use the extra armor and healing, so I went for it. He runs bows for a while and eventually kites me to this cave. He does not want to fight outside of it, so I go down to try and lure him in, and as soon as I do, I get glitched in this block as I pre-gap, and that ends up being the difference since he ends up surviving on half a heart after we slug it out in the cave. The one extra hit I could have gotten had I not gotten glitched could have saved me, but ultimately the game was just boned and my worst performance of the whole video. 0 kill death in game 24. Alright, we're finally at the end here. Game 25 started with a fight against this guy with bottom half, and dropping him quick was going to be important, but he did not want to let that happen. Fortunately though, I got him in a good enough position to where I could drop him, and although he ate more healing than I wanted him to, I got a little bit of healing out of it plus his Prot 3 pants, which was good enough for me. He also had a power 3 bow, and since I spawned with a power 3 bow, I decided to, you guessed it, make a power 4 a minute into the game. Eventually I come up on Zesk fighting some other guy, and Zesk wins the fight before I can get there, so unfortunately can't swipe any extra healing, but I figure if I can kill Zesk and take all the healing, I'm in a good position even though I'm not full diamond yet. Before his no clean timer ends though, I get backstabbed by this full diamond guy. I start putting in the work, I'm hitting my rod tricks, and I get him to back off for a second, and I truthfully do not want to fight him since he's probably stacked to the teeth, and I'd rather fight someone with less gear and get their helmet. As fate would have it, I turn around and see a 3/4 guy, so I start going after him, hoping the full diamond guy would go somewhere else, but instead he starts tailing me, and I'm over here praying I could shake him in some way somehow so I can kill this other dude and grab his helmet. I figure I've maybe got a good shot at that until he says in chat, I'm fan, so my thought process is, oh, you know, he's a fan of the channel, despite me barely uploading and not some freak, so maybe I can get him to let me fight this guy and we'll fight later. However, he stays on me and keeps hitting me, and I start to wonder if maybe this is someone I know. Someone in particular who used to be a friend to the whole SG community before he chose another certain someone over us despite their past heinous actions, and has since started targeting those of us who still get on MMC from time to time after we dropped him. Someone who constantly makes jokes about this channel every time he sees me in the lobby. Someone with a little over 100 ping to the NA servers. I get a bit of distance and check his ping, and sure enough, it is exactly who I think it is. Best UNI is an alt of the disgraced Chairman Mao 1966, who chose to forgive and defend Groomer Glamorous, even though there was so much evidence of her at 19 to 20 sexting someone who she thought was 16 years old. The boy turned out to only be 14 and lied about his age, but that doesn't make things any better since, well, she still willingly engaged in sexual conversation with someone who she thought was 16, and last I checked, 16 does not equal 18, the age you have to be considered a legal adult in the United States. If my MMC experience video had a cast of characters, she and Mao would have had the main roles as the two of them played together every day for months on end. And probably still do, I just haven't been on to see it. Mao is a deeply disturbed individual who has been groomed and exploited in the past, and rather than understand that what happened to him was deeply and utterly wrong on every level, he instead chose to think it was fine, legal, and ultimately, as we saw him rationalize with Glamorous's case, defensible. Everyone in the SG community hates Glamorous for what she did, and especially her lack of remorse for it, so when we called out Mao for hanging with her on a daily basis and defending her, he, again, did the irrational thing and took his and Glamorous's large teams to mercilessly target those who were against pedophilia and push them out of the community. A campaign that was largely successful, as the staff on here defend Glamorous as well, and a number of us ended up banned. Yeah, also, I mean, come on, look at this account. Anyway, back to the game. This was quite the tangent. As you've been seeing up till now, Mao was only swinging on me, and the 3/4 guy I wanted to fight eventually caught on, and they formed a pseudo team, both only going for me, and I was sure I was dead until the border shrank Mao out of our fight. Not sure where he ended up, but thank God he was gone, because that allowed me to finish the fight with the 3/4 guy and take his stuff. At this point, Mao was fighting Zesk, and all that mattered to me was making sure Mao lost because I did not want this pedo lover to win. I ensured that he died, as he eventually was killed by Zesk after quite a bit of time and after a number of arrows from my trusty Power 4. And I won't lie, I talked my shit. I was glad he was dead, and I was also glad this was the last game of the video, so I won't have to play again for a while. Even still, I was pretty sure I was just fried here at the end because Mao spent half the game draining my healing, but I'd beaten Zesk before and figured it was still possible to win. I was on my game in melee, and if I needed to fall back on my bow, I could do so. Mao also stuck around just to see if I'd lose, even typing in chat when lava spread to where I was trying to pick up the bucket and got me stuck for a second. Pretty quick though, I was able to break Zesk's only helmet, and he had to put on an iron one that also broke really fast. From there, I was able to eat my last piece of healing and drop him with 6 gaps left, so he definitely still could have won, but I had pressure, and with his helmet gone, he'd have needed a miracle to win that. While game 25 was a mess, I still ended it with a 3-kill dub against all odds. Well, that was certainly an interesting set of games, to be sure. I was honestly expecting it to go a lot worse, and, you know, I somehow came out of it with a positive win rate, actually. I got 14 wins out of 25 games, which is honestly a pretty good showing, especially given how, you know, crazy that some people in this game can go. But, you know, I got 14 wins, 11 deaths, pretty good showing. And I got 71 total kills, which is pretty good for 25 whole games. So that's an average of just under 3 kills a game, and I got a kill death ratio of approximately 6.5. So good, but there were definitely some stinkers in there. Game 16 was a real spot bother with the guy just constantly chasing me down. Game 10, like dying to the guy just bow boosting. It was kind of demonic, but that's just sort of how these meetup games go. And I think that would I say it's worth playing? I don't know. There's maybe if you want to just have fun, but even then, I don't know about that. Considering how some people play, considering how I play, oops. But like that's kind of just how it is. Meetup is a lot of the skill in UHC Meetup is just about picking fights wisely, knowing when to take fights. Like if you have like a good amount of healing, like say you got 12 gaps and 6 heads, and there's 3 players left, you ideally want the other 2 to fight and then drain their healing, so that way even if you don't have a ton of healing yourself, you can still pull out the win in the end, like when the other people are just sort of doing their thing and they drain each other, and yeah, it's just a good time whenever that happens. So yeah, with that in mind, that is going to wrap up this video. I am not sure if I'll make another one in this style. Crits will be launching ranked. The Conquest Competitive League is going to be doing that, so definitely join crits.gg's Discord if you want to play some of that, because that is where I will be. I don't know if any of y'all care about that. Most of y'all probably don't, but for those of you that do, crits.gg and specifically the Conquest Competitive League is going to be launching ranked. I'm sure they're going to have some sort of prize system going on, so ranked Conquest, that's where I'm going to be playing most of my Minecraft, even if it's not really a whole lot, but we'll see. They're still ironing out some bugs, so they should have that done in the coming weeks. So with that being said, thank y'all for watching. Not sure when the next video is going to be, if it's going to be SG or something else, or if it's just going to be like ranked Conquest, that sort of deal. So yeah, but I'll probably upload gameplay of that. But for now, I guess I'll see y'all then. Whatever and whenever that ends up being.